All right, let's talk about an unfolding case history. One of the things I want to show you here is some of these old models for structuring classroom discussion. They work quite well in Zoom. This is a form of scenario-based, right? Scenario-based learning. And in this case, you walk the students through a case history, often used in nursing and medical programs. Walk them through a case history, and then have them work in groups to answer at each step of that case history. What are they thinking? What would they do? What decisions would they make? And then in between that group work, right, you do have multiple sessions of group work in a class. You give feedback and you say, oh, hey, let's show you what this looks like. This is from Elizabeth Riley, I think. You can find some of these online. And you see the questions here. But the important thing is you have a role, you have a scenario up here. In this case, we have a person being admitted for a C-section, and then a baby is born. We have some history. Mother has a history of diabetes, hypertension. And then we ask the students to work in groups and answer these questions, right? So what are you concerned about in this particular case? What criteria indicate this C-section? What supplies and equipment should you have? The students all work together, come up with their answers, and then you have discussion about the student answers, a full class discussion. Then you move on to part two, right? In part two, right, is going to sort of evolve the case, right? You came in and here you were admitting them and getting ready for the situation, but now you have they're transferred, right? Something else happens, right? And you're asked, okay, well, what do we think now, right? And then you go to part three, you do the same thing, right? And in between each of these, you're having the discussion, you're having the feedback with the full class. So again, group work on the questions, go to the full class, have a discussion. Say the teacher says, here's what's right. Here's what you might not be noticing, and the case unfolds, right? So that is unfolding case history, right? It's a performance, right? It's a performance task. It doesn't have an authentic artifact if you want to get really geeky about, grasps and some of these models of authentic learning. But it's a performance task, right? They have to make these decisions the same way someone else in that role would, right? All right, that's how it works in the classroom. I think you can see almost immediately that this translates to Zoom really well, this sort of unfolding case history, right? So the students they do the reading, hopefully. They do the reading, they watch the videos, you come in, you're doing a short prezzo, right? And then what are you doing? You're doing kind of the equivalent of what you do in class. You're going to send them into breakout groups. And you're going to have them all work on a Google document. We'll get to the Google document here. Let's drop the Google document. There we go. You're going to have them all work in breakout groups on this Google document, right? And they're going to answer the questions to part one, but they can't see part two. You're not going to show part two until later, right? Because it unfolds, right? It unfolds bit by bit. This sort of night that you're working at the neonatal intensive care unit unfolds. You're going to look at their responses and you're going to say things like, oh, this is a really good observation. And what are we missing here? What are we missing in this answer, right? You're going to do that sort of group discussion when they come back. You're going to do it by looking at that group document that they have created in Google, right? And then, as they say, right, lather, rinse, repeat, right? Send them out, part two. They go a little further into that scenario. They make more decisions. Their understanding of the situation evolves, but you do basically the same thing. You come back, you discuss, and you talk, right? And you can do that 3 times. Like a lot of times, these are broken up into 3. But you can do that, 3 times in a class. And if you're doing it face to face, you can have them work on the documents. Right? You can have them work on the document in the class as well, right? If they're socially distanced, maybe you can pair some of the in-class students with some of the students online. Okay, I seem to have somehow lost somebody in this breakout group, so excuse me while I quickly draw them back in. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes students show up late or leave early. Sometimes people don't make it into the breakout groups. In any case, the narrow point is these unfolding case histories can be a quite good way to structure discussion. Broader point structured discussion models overall often translate well into Zoom. Now, what about the async, right? What about the async flex? I'm not going to go too much into it, but you can see an obvious thing here is maybe the asynchronous students just do this as group work offline, right? You just have them do the same task, but they've got to coordinate and do it together. You could also use that expansion technique we showed in the last one. Maybe the async students come and they look at what the other groups have produced, and they have to, in some way, they have to expand on it, comment on it, right? But in any case, I don't think the async is a hard flex in this case. I just mainly wanted to show the usefulness of this particular model and of some of these structured discussion techniques in general.